Okay, it is August 14th.
I don't think so, I'm not sure it's really necessary.
7:13, and do you have a motion to move back into open meeting?
I motion to move back to the open meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Everyone is here now. So roll call.
Joe Allen.
Nate Blake.
Angela Roy.
Wayne Peterson. Frank Boyd.
Best man, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any conflicts or extensions?
None.
Could we have a vote on the consent agenda, including tonight's agenda and the meeting minutes of July 10th?
I move that we accept tonight's consent agenda consisting of tonight's agenda and the meeting minutes of July 10, 2013.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Under announcements, let's see too many people who would be affected, but I did want to announce that Friday afternoon between 1 and 2, there will be blasting up on High Desert. Just so people are aware.
What's the last before?
The house that's going in there across from the Berry house, Marchant's house, is putting in a basement, and it hit a solid rock shelf.
Probably just did a big grand boulder.
Super duper jackhammer wasn't doing anything. With that, and with that in mind, so we need to address this because we have nothing in our ordinances about blasting. I'm accumulating a file with Christopher helping me do some research and wanting to on what we need to do to establish policy, because I don't imagine this is the last time we're going to face this.
Do they have to set a bond based on construction possibility of property damage?
There's nothing. I mean, we have nothing.
What about county and state?
I talked to county, and they sent us a form that they said that they always have the fire department. So I did talk to the excavation people, owner anyway, and I told him which houses I thought were important to put seismic counters on. And I personally went around and talked to as many as I could find at home and warned them of it if it would be happening.
The contractors that do the blasting are heavily regulated by the state, and so they do what you do.
But he wasn't planning on doing anything, and neither was the contractor, and that's why I did it. When I got blown off by the contractor.
Because there's only about three contractors in the Southern Utah area that are allowed to blast.
He was, SAP was the only one. The county referred, said that almost every community, it is passed on to the fire department to oversee, but they were the first people I called, and he was, Steve was pretty good about it. And the county does not charge a fee for the permit, they just have a form they have to fill out with, like how many times you get blast, what the charges are.
So we don't know the size of each of the churches or how many churches. Blake's right, it's full. It's just a large boulder, it's off from the mountain, it's all in here. Once they took out
We had a great big show at ours.
Mhm.
A regular one wouldn't do it, I mean, this was gigantic, and they were the size of Volkswagen, was bigger. So,
Yeah, I had one size of the car, that I think it was the life of it. We use that jacket, but this apparently is a rock shelf.
the rock shelves.
I don't know.
They probably,
So it's just a granite boulder.
It's just a great big diuretic boulder about the size of this tabletop.
I walked over it, it looked,
Like 3 times the size of this.
mm,
If they're gonna blast this, if a hammer's not gonna go through there on that granite, it's probably a quarter the size of this room.
That's very interesting, but, so we need to have adopt some sort of ordinance for
Yes.
future reference?
that's why
Okay.
I wrote that. Okay. So, any other announcements? Okay, Any public hearings right now? Action items, first on the agenda is Rick Sant's preliminary map phase 2. And Rick, we don't have anything. Are we supposed to take action? We have nothing to look at. What are you asking for?
Well, I'm Rick Sant, and it's concerning our Phase 2 approval. It was approved a year ago for Phase 2 of our Silver Point Estates preliminary map. And since we're not proceeding to get the map approved, we asked for an extension, which is allowed in the ordinance there. So we're just simply asking you to extend that approval for 1 more year.
So, any discussion on this at this point?
No,
I'm
we-
Rick, I have no problem with that.
Okay, do we have a,
I move that we grant the extension ordinance, under ordinance 21.6.5, a 1-year extension on preliminary map phase 2 for 1 year.
I'll second that.
okay, any further discussion? Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
And then we have the community covenant. That's the sign.
All right, well, I'll just, for the benefit of those here, again, thank you for allowing me to come back. The community covenant program, it means a lot to us to have the solidarity of the town, and I have a, Sharpie here that we usually use, so.
Oh, right on the citizen
Do we
first.
want to, you got 2 up in there?
Got one.
One for us and one for.
There was 3.
Did you need all 3 signs?
Yeah, we usually do 3. What I do is you got Wednesdays here with you all, and I forget to bring a frame. I will bring you a frame. Wednesdays here with you all. One goes to our nearest National Guard armory, and one goes to the state headquarters to the National Guard. So while you're signing, I'll just explain again for the good of the group that's here. The Community Covenant Program is a program that's designed to create solidarity within the cities and towns in the state for support for military members, veterans, and their families. We know that this support already exists. It's just that this program helps us increase the communication and the resources and the relationships that we have through this sort of program. So, if you wouldn't mind, maybe, ma'am, would you read with the...
Leeds Town, we the community recognize the commitment and sacrifices service members and their families make for our country. Recognize the strength of service members comes from their families, and that families must be supported by the community. Also, the strength of the community comes from each and every resident. We are committed to building partnerships that support the strength, resilience, and readiness of service members and their families. We're committed to supporting families through programs and volunteer efforts to mitigate the impact of deployments, and to remember and honor all service members who have served and sacrificed on our behalf.
Okay, so what this means from this point is, again, It means that we have a good relationship, which we already had. But one of the things that we encourage your town to consider as part of the community covenant program is appointing a person, a military liaison, and that can be done through your legislative process as well. We have sample resolutions that we can give you that show that. This person acts as a point of contact for us that we communicate with, and they can contact us. Residents in the town, if they have military issues, they can go to that person. We'll train them. We have quarterly training that they can attend via the internet as well, or they can attend in person at Tuesday in Salt Lake. But that just gives your town the freshest and most cutting edge information. As an example, the one we're doing this next month, which we'll send emails out to Scrollsbury at least, is all about military children and the initiatives that we have for military children throughout the state of Utah. So that just provides your town with the information and the resources that are at your fingertips if that becomes an issue for any resident in the town.
So as I recall from before, a year or so ago, there's no way that we get notified, or it's just if we find out, or if they come to us, then.
Right. One of the things, one of the things we encourage, because of private information, even we can't share with you who are military members in your community, but they're pretty easy ways to have them self-select. As an example, I don't know what your city does for utilities. Do you send out a newsletter or a bill at least, or emails or something? A lot of cities have started to put just a banner at the bottom margin that says, if you're a military member, please notify the town office so that we can provide you with any resources that we might have available. That way they can come self-select.
Okay.
That's one thing we encourage you to do. Another way to work through that is, I don't know if your town has an organization, a veteran service organization, or if they're part of what goes into St. George or Washington or something that places like the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the American Legion, those are also great ways to find who these veterans are that are out in the communities as well. So what our best role is in that sort of stuff is to consult with you on ways to find them and what resources we have that you can communicate to them that we have, or what resources you have. And on top of that, just the continued awareness that we still care, even though our wars are drawing down. That's one of our biggest concerns as practitioners, is that we see in the big media that the wars are drawing down, therefore the war's over, yay, but the wars are still being fought at home with their jobs, with their families, with their substance abuse, post-traumatic stress, other issues that we're trying to stay on top of. And so this program helps spread that net for support for them.
Joe, I assume you would consider that.
That'd be great. Would you mind if you just give me your contact information on the agenda, and then we'll just get you on our email list, and you'll receive our newsletters and our notices of training, things like that.
Well, I think for your service and all the good you're doing for veterans, so thank you very much.
If my count is right, you all are number 211 of 250 cities and towns that we have signed, so we're
In Utah.
in Utah, yes. We're making our way, so it's somewhere around in there, so the 210s area. So again, I'll leave one with you, and one of these times when I pass it through, I'll bring you a frame. We have to make sure I just got it today, so we'll get these ones taken care of. Any other questions or anything for me?
Just like, thank you very
And I'll be in
much.
touch with you. We're going to do a similar one with Big C for others as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item C on action items. There is a list of equipment requested by our Public Works Department, some of which we might be able to cover out of in-town impact fees.
Where were these figures generated? Is this Antonio?
Antonio, either called around or checked catalogs to get prices and trying to get the best prices.
You know, a lot of these can be bought. Yeah, for instance, I've got a brake on that I don't use. I've got an asphalt cutter, blade. I've got a generator, I've got a pressure washer. These things, I've had about 6 generators. But I think you got on, other than the signs, I think if you got on KSL.com, you will find these. For probably 30 cents on the card.
Please speak with me from the equipment.
Yeah, pressure washer, he wants to price out a pretty cheap pressure washer. For a small generator, I've got the Honda 3500, which cost me about 3,500. But you want to be careful and get a good generator, because like I said, generators, they go out quick. Demolition hammer, they'll find that cheap. Asphalt cutter with blade, those are kind of dozen. They just walk behind the blade, without a blade on them. I think if you got KSL.com, I think you get that price down to probably about 4,000. And I got that generator price, and I'm get a good generator. Get a good Honda or Yamaha generator.
So Blake, what would happen though if this went out for bids to a supplier that maybe they might get all the stuff that's compatible with the generator and give it someone at a reduced price? Because one of the problems is if we buy something used, somebody really know how many more work hours we can get out of it being used.
I just took my Bobcat in, my job almost 3 or 4 times a day. I can call H&E Equipment. I can get this list and call H&E Equipment and go over the quantities with them, and get a price from them. For the plate compactor, not many people use the plate compactor anymore. And I've got a jumping jack, but not many people use the plate compactor anymore, so those are.
So can you meet with Antonio and talk to him about
Oh, absolutely.
these pieces of equipment and the life? I mean,
Yeah,
you know, some of these may have a very long life and don't
Well,
wear out that easily.
like I said, this
And others may,
Like-
generators.
the signs are gonna be signs, you're not gonna do anything on signs. Your plate compactor, you're gonna be able to save a bunch on that. Your oil sprayer, you're gonna save on that, because a lot of people got out of they used to spray basements. I don't know if they're looking at oil, either way, you're spraying oil.
You could also talk to him about how he can.
Yeah. Yeah.
wants to use it.
Yeah,
In
and
spirit
let's-
of streamlining this process, and I would suggest that we approve up to this amount, or budget up to this amount,
And budget up to that amount,
and not have to come back at a future meeting to get
but
updates.
I'd rather save $1,500
No,
elsewhere and put it into a generator, because I will tell you that you spend $1,000 on a generator, and that's the cheapest generator out there, and you're not gonna get a year out of it.
Then I move that we approve a budget of $6,139.35 for expenditures for road repair equipment.
I'll second that.
did we amend that to say up to?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Is it a budget?
Budget up to.
Okay, then yes, so amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do you have Antonio comment?
Yes.
They mean coming in anyhow. So I'll have a listen like that.
So Bob, can you make that, 200? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mayor, will you take a roll call vote on that where it's an expenditure of money?
Thank you. That's right. You need a roll call vote? So,
Joe Allen, aye.
Meg Blake, aye.
Angela Moore, aye.
Wayne Peterson, aye.
Frank Boyd, aye.
passed. Thank you.
That's
I'm trying to understand his handling.
Yeah.
He was supposed to do like this.
Okay, so, number one under discussion items, the LDW water tank. So, Elliot, would you like to?
It's me. Is it okay if I sit right here just to see stuff?
Mike's active on that.
Big turnout, huh? A lot of interest in that water tank. I got some drawings here. See them? I don't know. I forget how many times I've been here on this. I forget all the questions. If you want to go over a little bit, I can. I want to address one issue though first, because Frank asked about the BLM land near our tank. It comes to the property line. It doesn't affect the road area at all.
Right. And I got the email.
We sent it to you. I think I'm not
Right.
sure, but he got it. So you
Yeah, I
can
got it.
if you want.
The map we had seen showing it up in this area, you couldn't tell how far it went. So,
Okay. Yeah, it appears.
I think somebody had told you that you didn't get past the tank.
I think Mr. Sant had a map, and it was hard to tell where
Right.
the property lines were. So I didn't know where.
So it looks like we're safe on that one. I don't know what else to address. Again, we have a fixture, we have something that's there that's going to be there. It's been there for decades. We'd like to make an improvement on it. Something that's attractive to the neighborhood. We're asking for conditional use under residential because that's an option that's available to us for your land use ordinances, chapter 14, 14-3, or 14.3.2. Public utilities and essential services. We also ask that you do that since we have a utility account that's on a rural residential. The other utilities are over here. So it's not like we're asking you to do something that's out of the ordinary. It's already something that's been done, and it's something that's actually in the land use ordinance of the town.
I'm, more and more I think about it, I'm fine with bringing it under that section of our ordinances. My concern would be, what if LDWA just dissolves or gets absorbed by the county at some point, decides to sell this building? I think we all want to prevent a situation where this ends up in private ownership and we have an office building there on Silver Reef Road. So
That's a good concern. Again, that's why we won't be commercial.
Yeah.
Because we don't put that there. If I'm correct though, in your ordinances, and I don't have them all here, but there's something in it that says if we get that under the residential, if the building is vacant for more than 1 year, it conforms back to the current zoning regulations. Does anybody know which one that is?
not off the top of my head, but I would suggest that
We should cover that.
or could we add some sort of deed restriction? That if the property sold, that conditional use permit goes away.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem. I don't think once we set it up, it's gonna cover probably this year.
I don't think so either.
But I'm all for that.
It's
Again,
these what-if scenarios.
Yeah, and again, that's why we didn't want commercial to start with, because I don't want to put that risk, 20, 30 years from now, to the neighbors in the area.
And the neighbors have all been informed, haven't had any input. We had one May, I think, out of the 74, not mistaken,
There hasn't been a formal
Right.
notification. There was an informal notification, and there was one day and one meeting. And what I was thinking was maybe audience members, I know at least Jerry Addison had questions and wanted to know more. And I wondered, Jerry, if you wanted to come up and ask anything or state anything, or
I have pretty much
Seem
an
like-
answer to that. Any question I had, I've talked to, discussed with Elliot and so forth. Up to date.
So you're okay with that?
I'm okay with it. I just, I'm going to assume that it's gonna look pretty nice when everybody's done with it. If it's not, then it would be a little nicer. But if it's done right, as you say, why, it'll look okay.
And you'll pull formal permit on this?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll work through the process. And it will be landscape, and we will, landscape, but we'll make it look nice.
Okay, you're currently zoned, residential, and I'm thinking that you may need to move to, continue to rezone it to rural residential
Well,
in order to get a conditional.
if you can, if you can, check the ordinances and see what you think. 'Cause to me, it looks like we can do it under the R11.
R11.
Andy, I think you're right, and I think, in Alan Roberts had mentioned, or previously, that here's the dilemma we're in. The dilemma is that you have to change the ordinance, and the only way to change the ordinance is to commercial. And that creates the problem, because no one wants to have commercial next, and my concern is that we have Cletus Hamilton has acreage over there that you could convert to commercial. We've had commercial on other pieces of property. We don't want to have that in that area. I mean, the problem is LDWA is a great organization, and Elliott's a great guy and all this, but it's the fact that if we look at how many people have been on city council, how many have been on planning committee, and how many have been offices at LDWA has changed. What someone plans today, we have no control over it later on. So let me give you a couple of scenarios. So it's not that I'm anti anything, I'm just thinking about the can of worms that we open up. So the first thing being is, so let's say they go rural residential. Now they need to add, expand. So now they want to put a garage or some other building on the property. So then we have another thing that might be just too much for what the neighbors want to see happen, or the impact of the traffic, or the setting of it, or like, is it the landscape meet the expectation, or how much does the building get modified? Then LDWA said, well, we want to sell it now, but we want to go back now and have somebody use it as a residential, because it's got a garage, it's got a bathroom, so we'll have people living in it. So now you have something that's not a home, but it's a modified water tank that's now going to be a home. If you make it commercial, then anybody could occupy it. It could be a bar, it could be some other type of business that may not be what we would like to have in part of town, or what it opens the can of worms for other people to do. The problem of it is that LDWA did not come for a permit to cut the water tank and make it a storage for their equipment. So now they want for us to then begin to create this. I understand their desire in doing that, but then we do it for them, but we don't do it for other people. So I'm just being consistent. That's, it goes back to the same thing on all this other
I
stuff.
didn't address that. It was brought up last time as far as cutting the home tank. That area was always a storage unit, as long as anybody can remember. It was a true eyesore at that point. There was a lot of equipment laying in the way. There was an old trailer.
I don't disagree with you. It's awesome.
The idea, we needed a storage area, and being sensitive to the area, we and the neighbors, we wanted to hide the stuff we have. We can't leave it out at the well site anymore. We did that, but we had a lot of vandalism.
I agree with you, and
And as I said before, we haven't put the electric in yet,
right.
which is something that we need, but we waited on.
But it would have been nice if you would come to the town and said, do I need to apply to make this and cut into that? It's just like people cut our streets, but they don't ask. My concern is too, because we're going to be dealing with this situation. Other people are going to do some commercial property right down the road here. On the impound lot, people are writing an ordinance for it. And you're talking about Quest here. And if you call it a data communication center, for that's where the data communications going, I think that bypasses a lot of the regulations rather than calling it just an office.
Well, as I said, that will be what it is. We're gonna eventually have all the tanks within the next year and a half, all the tanks will be unscathed. So that's where the information will go. And it's also where we're doing water testing here now, based on the conversations I've had with the council members here,
And that's
as far as the water
And
capture.
that's my biggest concern is because I don't want to lean, because LWA supplies our water, I don't want to lean towards LWA and say, okay, well, no, you can't have this here, even though you're under a commercial zoning, but we don't have an ordinance for you yet, which is pretty much the same scenario, but you've got Quest next door that is a data communication center, and I think you call it data communication, am I correct? You call it a data communication center? Is that qualified under?
I don't know what activity goes on at all, very described.
You're saying about LWA confirming things today.
I think you said what goes on next door.
Well, here at Quest. Every phone call that goes in and out of Leeds goes through Quest. So it's a data communication center. And it's on R1.
If I could make a suggestion, I share concern with regard to trying to figure out how to make something fit. I think it's very important to try to approach things so that it'll serve us not only well today, but serve us well going forward and minimize the need to try to treat things as special case scenarios. I know from previous communities in which I've lived that utilities have needed to have operations within residential areas in order to provide the service that was desired by the community. One thing that comes to mind immediately is with DSL, there was a maximum distance that you could be from the switch where you could not get the digital service, and it was desired by the community. And homes were, in one particular instance, decorated for the season of the year to make it look like a residence, even though if you were to open the door, all you would find was a bunch of communications equipment behind that. But it was set up as a utility in a residential area in order to provide service to that community. And I'm not sure how involved it would be for us. We have residential, we have rural residential, to develop a class of zoning called utility residential, where we set it up so that it would be utilities that were serving the community of Leeds that could be located in what would otherwise be deemed a residential area with town council approval for the purpose that they request, but with the understanding that if they were to look to sell that property, that unless it was to another utility providing a service to the town of Leeds, that it would need to satisfy the requirements of being a residential property. And I think that would address your issue with regard to somebody just living in an office building, basically, if it were to kind of revert back that way. It sounds like the purpose for what LDWA would like to do, that would not conflict with what you're looking to do. I'm not looking to conflict with what Quest/CenturyLink, I think I've heard it referred to a couple different ways. But the other property that we have in town would seem to meet up with that. And I would prefer to be able to say those two properties qualify right now, and if somebody has a legitimate similar type of situation to provide a utility but needing property within the town of Leeds, that we would have something in place to say this is the criteria, this is the process you would follow. I think it's also valuable to try to take a property that is currently definable as a bit of an eyesore, make it better without objections from the community, and I know that notification went out to the extent that people read the newsletter that went out with the quarterly trash bills, that they had the opportunity to comment on it tonight. So I don't feel as if there's real opposition to this kind of an approach. I think it could accomplish what it sounds as if the community is interested in doing, and yet address the concerns that I think members of council legitimately are raising with regard to trying to point to say, I think it might fit under this type of thing if you interpret it that way. I think it would really make it very difficult for other properties to come in and say, how about me? If we were to develop the concept that utility residential, and I don't think it's far-fetched, as I say, in a previous community, there was a purpose behind having utilities located within residential areas, but they did what they could to enhance that residential area, not to detract from it with their utility activity.
I tend to agree with what you're saying, but I just wonder if we actually need to create a whole new classification of zoning that's voting residential. I think in our current ordinances as they're written, both rural residential and residential in the conditional uses section allow for public utilities and essential services.
Yeah, I would,
And what we have to, as a council, decide is, is water public utility? Yes. Is water an essential service? I'd say so. And is the use of that building as an office building and storage facility in keeping with the spirit of that section? And myself personally, I say yes, so long as it's understood that property ever changes ownership, then that conditional use permit is revoked.
I agree.
I like what Wayne says, and I like what you're saying, but I think I want to make it clear where I'm coming from. I've been on the council, my term will end, but I'll be on 8 years. I've tried to be consistent and not prejudiced or weigh, my oath as an office. And so I have been very stern about following the rules and denying people in this town things from my standpoint, and I want to be consistent the same way. So if we want to write an ordinance specifically to meet that, I think would only be fair is to sit down with LDWA and say, these are some things that we would have expectations and limitations placed, meaning a certain designated landscape, the way the parking would be, the building could not be resold, it would come back to the ownership of the town, or whatever the case may be, if they abandon that or whatever, because we don't want to get in a situation that our decision we make today, we burden the future LDWA, the citizens, the community that lives there, and the council doing to say, yeah, we'll let them add an addition. Yeah, we'll let them change it to this. We'll let them sell it for this. Because then what we really ended up doing is we made it nice for right now, but we've made it a problem for someone in the future. So, in other words, it can only be a utility, and nothing else. Then no one else can come in and say, well, I have a real estate business, or I have a haircutting business, or I want to do a shoe shop, or I want to sell ponies out of there, or whatever. We don't get into that problem. Every time something's come up in this council, and being a small town without a lot of resources, we try and do things to be accommodating to our friends, but we end up creating another problem for someone down the road. And so we ultimately need to follow the rules and not bend it, or read between the lines and say, well, it kind of says that way, but if we say we kind of do this, then it's okay. No, we have to be straight and honest and make a decision and do it for the best interest of what the rule is. If we don't like the law or the ordinance, then we need to modify it and change it and have people make their opinion. But it's nothing personal. It's just that I'm very, very stubborn. I want to follow this because I want to get up in the morning and look myself in the mirror and say, I did the best I could for the town and followed those procedures. Whether they like me or not, I just want to do my job. I don't want to shirk my responsibility. And that's why I'm always very, very picky about stuff. And so.
Well, Frank, I have to agree on Joe's side, and it pertains to you as well, that as a conditional use permit, LDWA abandons that building and doesn't use that building. At that point in time, that conditional use permit is null and void.
Yeah, but I'm not sure our ordinance is clear enough. I think Wayne is right that we need to look and check with our attorney and with the state to see how best is something to be worded. I don't want someone to come back and say, I want a conditional permit because of this issue and that we're going to do it. Because that's what we're in with this other situation up here, is this person thinks that everybody on the council said, well, this is okay, this is okay, this is okay. And no one has said that. And it just starts people thinking that, you can just go and ask somebody and they'll just modify everything for you. So I don't want to get into it's like, well, LDWA gets it modified, but someone else does it. I want to make sure we follow the procedure and not try and figure out a little loophole. Do it right.
So you think we ought to speak with the legal counsel?
Well, see, and I think, I don't know when you need drafting an ordinance, because each of our current ordinances relating to land use within residential and rural residential say that specifically, all criteria must be complied with to obtain a conditional use permit, plus any additional conditions the planning commission and town council may apply. So I think we can fit it in under the current, what we have there of.
But I would like to legally find out, because I don't want someone else to come back and say,
Oh, I agree, we should have our council look at it, but I think it's,
Well, Frank, I'm not against the sports property in there in 2 years.
well, geez, what are you gonna call it? Wait in?
Well, am I interpreting this incorrectly? Because I'm looking at land use ordinance, and it says right here that a conditional use, you do public utility. I mean, that's not a loophole, that's an attorney, I'm assuming he's already read this.
No, I was mistaken, I'm sorry. It is there.
Yeah, it's in-
Rural and.
So, I mean, we're not asking for anything out of the ordinary. If you want to put a stipulation on there,
Well,
like Joe said,
yeah,
it stops if it sells.
Okay.
I mean, I live up there too. I mean, I don't want it to turn into
well,
the biggest sports bar.
here's the thing though.
Sure.
Okay, there's a different ordinance there's a different interpretation of the law for water tanks. Okay, and so it's been an abandoned water tank. It could be put back in water, but the doors been cut out. Okay.
Well, actually, it wouldn't hold water. That's what we did.
Okay, so now you want to turn it to an office. So the question then becomes, is this a operation of a business or is this a utility? And that's where the gray area comes about. Because utility is not operating day-to-day services and collecting invoices and bills. This utility up here is not a customer service. That's what makes the difference in that definition.
Well, the second one, as Joe said, is essential services. I don't know why that was put in there, but I'm assuming that went through an attorney. There's a reason that's in there. Which is separate to the comment. It's separate from public utility.
I move,
This is
We're not making any
This is,
decision.
there's no, this is
I,
discussion.
I suggest that we just have legal counsel brief the codes and maybe recommend any additional wording that needs to go into the conditional use permit for the utility easement, or for the utilities.
Well, and I think before you go down that path, that either we have a, open business discussion meeting with LDWA and talk about, as citizens as well as council, concerns that we have about the building, if they're willing to meet some of those criteria. Because if they don't want to put a concrete pad in or a hard surface asphalt, they don't have a budget for that, or they don't want to put in landscaping or whatever a certain way to meet, so that you don't see anything there, then there's no reason to go and do anything further.
Well, maybe I'm wrong on this, but isn't that the permitting process? I mean, this is getting a permission to have something, but isn't that part of the permitting process? So you'll tell us that kind of stuff?
Well, that's what we need to find out, yeah.
Because we're just looking for zoning right now, right?
But in any case, it would have to be, go through the conditional use process with the planning commission. Another concern
Well, the problem with
is the
the planning
setback
commission is
from
we
the
don't,
road.
or we don't have a planning commission. Especially take off on employee.
Yes, we do. We've got another person, we've got 3 people who are not employees, are board members. Yeah, so we're good on that point. So, do you think that at this point, well, let's see. We said that there would be citizen comment. Is there anyone else that wants to comment on this issue before we decide what we're next meeting is?
Mayor, council, we've had this discussion a number of times in the past. I know very well personally the process that has gone through to this point with LEWA, and having previous interaction with Elliot and some discussion in my previous position. I find it disconcerting that how difficult it is for the administration to look at, number one, not an application, because an application has not been applied for, which I'm not saying that there should not be any discussion with applicants before an application is applied for. There should be. I think that's very responsible and mandatory for an administration to do. So applicants have a very clear understanding of a direction to go and how it may fit. As has been brought up in Chapter 14, 14.2.4 of conditional or permitted uses. I'm sorry, in 14.3, conditional uses, a public utility, essential services. Essential services are what services are required to provide that public utility. As has been used for as an example, CenturyLink property here on Main Street, formerly Quest, falls in the line of a non-conforming use in a rural residential zone or a residential zone. In Leeds' own definition, a non-conforming use is a use which lawfully occupied a building or land at the time this ordinance became effective and which does not conform to the use regulations of the zone in which it is located. The tank that we're talking about was governed by a non-conforming use that was used as a water storage tank before Ordinance 2008. The land use ordinances were adopted. Therefore, it has the ability to continue to be used for that use, a non-conforming use of a water storage tank or a public utility, which is an essential part of that public utility. As soon as a non-conforming use is no longer used for 1 year, it loses its ability that's granted by that non-conforming use. It's no longer a water storage tank. It physically cannot hold water. If the owners of that tank wanted to do whatever they needed to where it could hold water, they could still use it for that use. But the use that they're asking for is not a water storage tank. It is for a office use. Therefore, it no longer stands in a non-conforming category. And it's governed by the ordinances that govern the land that it goes with. Residential. Offices are not allowed in residential zones. In 14.3.10, unlawful uses. All uses other than those set forth as permitted or conditional uses above are unlawful. It is not lawful to put an office there. And I can tell you that it's an office, and they want to use CenturyLink's building as an example of one that supposedly the town has set a precedence on. The town has not set any precedence. That building still conforms with the conditional use of a non-conforming use under 14.3.2. That use has not changed. There is no office activity going on there. It's a data center, Are there individuals that work in there? Absolutely. Are there individuals that would work in and around a water storage tank? Absolutely. Are there individuals that would work in and around an electrical substation that could be in a rural residential or residential as a non-conforming use? Absolutely. When you change the use of the land, you have to go by the land use laws that govern that land. The applicant can make application for a zone change. Under the current zoning, it does not allow for any type of office usage. Thank you.
Mr. Samp, you're close to the property. Do you have any comments?
Yes, I'm Rick Sant, and we do own property, I believe, within 200 to 300 feet of the site. You called me there a couple of months ago and asked me about it, and my thoughts are on it is that if it is granted through a conditional use permit, I've obtained a lot of CUPs, and it's quite a detailed process. And I would think that if they are allowed to do that and make application for a CUP and come in to the town council, that they would have a plot plan, they would have a landscaping plan, there would be restrictions on noise, on manufacturing, there would be restrictions on storage of trash or any equipment, there would be a restriction on the amount of vehicles that could be stored there, anything that would be a nuisance in a residential area. In other words, I would assume that it would be landscaped and maintained on a weekly basis so that the landscaping looks presentable and that all of these other items would not be involved, so that when you looked at it, it would appear as though a home would appear, with a few vehicles going there each day, with it landscaped and maintained, without any trash or storage or big vehicles being stored around it. So if you go through the normal CUP process, if that's what the town is going to recommend after legal counsel looks at it, I would just hope that you would follow through with that process and make sure that it does look like a residence being used in whatever capacity you call it. So I'm sure the council will do that and take care of that.
How would you feel if it had to be done through commercial, became commercial property?
Well, I'm not an attorney and I don't know, but I do think that it can be handled as a CUP within a residential area, providing your council looks at it. What Alan has said, I really don't know anything about. All I can say is I would not like to see it zoned commercial. I'd like to see it remain residential. And if what Wayne says, you have to come up with a new ordinance to keep it in a residential state, why, that's what I would recommend. I would not want to see it go commercial. There's just no way that should be in a commercial zone. It should remain residential with a conditional use, if it's permitted.
Thank you. Shirley, do you have any comments?
I say, one meeting, our plans are to meet in a closed session, 2 weeks from tonight. I think we can bring this under council advisement.
So, one of the things that I noticed looking in chapter 14, well, or in 13 also, under conditional use, it doesn't specifically state that, a water tank is a conditional use, it says public utilities. And it seems that LDWA qualifies as a public utility. Public uses it, needs it, it's essential service. So I think it would depend on how you define utility. But that still doesn't address the fact that the tank is located fairly close to the roadway. I'm not sure of the information there. And wonder how we might deal with that. But it
You know, it's gonna be there. I mean, it's gonna be close, if it's close to the road, it's gonna be close to the road. I mean, it is what it is. It was there probably before that road was what it is now. Like I said, we don't want commercial either. I'm just looking for direction, guys. I'm trying to make, like I said, I'm trying to make something useful. I also have been going to council meetings for 10 years. And I know at times things have been inconsistent. People have gotten favors. And I don't want that to happen here. So I'm trying to do the right thing. But I need a direction and, let me know what we need to do to get this thing going.
So, you think we should recommend that, they apply for a conditional, use? And then we go through the process with the planning commission, it would require a public hearing, so we would have official input at that point. But this is not up for a vote, so just we need to get some direction to LDA at this point. Any thoughts?
I think Frank had a suggestion that would probably be appropriate. I think, Elliot, as you suggested, this is kind of uncharted territory because of the situation with the board, and it's the only water tank that's being considered for this in the town of Leeds. To go over what you've spoken many times about landscaping, limited parking, and all that. I think it would be helpful to have that delineated, and we need to move forward and do that. I'm not sure, Nate, that actually would qualify for a closed meeting. Not everything that we discuss with a lawyer is actually eligible for a closed meeting. I think it needs to be done in a public setting. But I also think it doesn't require the entire council to sit down with the LDWA and try to come up with a initial format of what would be viewed as the final look of the property. From LDWA's perspective, from what they would like, and I understand your sensitivity, what you would like it to look like for the community, and then for one or two members of the council to be able to offer their input and try to come up with something that would seem to be satisfactory to those that met as a subgroup. But I think it needs to all be done in the open when it comes to the entire council looking at anything with respect to this. And I think that would make more sense to do than to have a permit submitted before we went through that process. Even though, in general, I don't think the town council should be sitting down with everybody and getting into that level of detail. But I think this is a unique enough situation. We have a cement concrete storage tank that's been there since anybody can remember. It is not something anybody would say they're proud of and would view as one of the nicest views in the town of Leeds. And I think that it's something that what's being offered is a way to perhaps address that and make it better. And I think therefore I feel comfortable that it's unique enough where we are, that it would not be inappropriate prior to an application to go over some of the requirements that would seem to be needed in order for it to be moved forward in a way that could be put through the proper channels. If our existing ordinances and zoning would be acceptable, I'm fine with that. I'm not one who likes to add new levels of things. I just lived in an area where I knew it existed because of the need in their particular situation. And I think that would be a better next step than to just start the process. I'd like to see this move forward, though. It has been several months, and I'd like to get to a resolution of this so that we either move forward and improve what's there or come to the conclusion that for whatever reason it needs to just be lived with as it is.
I have one question to pose to our council, because I believe that Mayor Marks does make very good and valid points. let's forget about it being a water tank right now, and that it's an eyesore. What if this was just a piece of property, and our public utility, our water company was coming to us saying, in this residential zone, we own some property, and we want to build a storage and office facility? Would that fall into our residential ordinance? And would we allow that? And to me, it's one question, is that public utilities and essential services is an office space for LDWA. Are we going to define it as an essential service, regardless of whether it's a water tank or not?
I think I've already expressed myself.
Well, and like, just to clarify, the reason I mentioned speaking with council in closed meeting in 2 weeks is because we have council, a legal counsel here representing us, and I thought it would be nice to bring that up and get his advisement. I guess it's just easy to think about it all.
Yep.
Yep.
That's all written there, this one.
I would like to see legal counsel's opinion on that question I just posed. And then take it a step further. Okay, we have a water tank, we have an eyesore. Does that fall in line with essential service and public goods? Myself personally, I'd say yeah.
And then if that was the case, would you be comfortable having a member or two of council sit down with the LDWA to get a more detailed understanding of how this would look if they were to proceed with it?
Can you draft something up, Elliot, with parking, landscaping?
You want it drawn out or written out?
The conditional use has to go through planning commission.
In 2 weeks, is that what it is?
Planning commission meets the court. And it would, I'm not sure if it requires a public hearing or not.
Well, I'm confused. You want us to go to the planning commission or something? Or?
Well, we can have you come back and present to us, but it still has to go through planning commission.
Yeah, but I think that adequate landscape drawing and parking, and what you're actually going to do with the structure itself, and the property surrounding it, I think would be beneficial.
To present to the council.
It would be nice
I'm
to see
confused
it.
because I don't know what the next step is.
Well, you have to go through the planning commission to get conditional.
Well, like I said, the reason we didn't meet originally was because there wasn't a period so we but is that, I mean, what is it you?
But it sounds like council would like to see it, and if you could have it ready in 2 weeks, we could put it on the agenda. But there'll be no decision made. We still have to go to the planning commission.
And we'll follow up with council regarding resolution.
I would prefer to do that because I don't think it's fair after several months of saying that we didn't have a situation that could go to the planning commission to now just send it back across the net and suggest that it's in their court to deal with. I think we started a process with the LDWA of this discussion at the council level. I'm not denying that we should go that route ultimately, but I think we owe it to the LDWA to provide a reaction to what's been suggested several times before, but just get to the level of specifics so that people just understand what it is that we've been talking about for these last several months.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think parking, landscaping, that doesn't even show setbacks on it. I think all that would be.
And we'll put it on the agenda for other discussion items. Yes, Mr. Sand, you have a comment?
Oh, me? Yeah, I just have one last comment. You know, when you called me a month ago and told me about it, I was excited about it because I pictured it being landscaped and looking a lot nicer than it looks today. And I guess that's my other comment. is that if they are turned down, it's just gonna sit there the way it is and continue to deteriorate. And if they do with it what they say they're going to do and landscape it and maintain it, it's gonna look a lot nicer as you drive up the road than the way it looks right now.
I agree. Like I said, I think we need to see something, and let's take much this, see your table and drop the landscape plan and parking structure and not
Well,
parking structure, but parking plan.
Well, I appreciate the cleaning up. I mean, if it couldn't legally be done the way it is, I think as LBWA, using it as storage should make sure that it looks good enough and put more landscaping in to do it that way, just as a storage area, so it wouldn't look as an eyesore, because we've opened that building up for putting storage in it, so you're making more access to it than just a tank sitting there. So I think the premise of the thing is to find out legally the way it is, just like Alan Roberts has stated. And again, it's been abandoned, it wasn't storage, it's gone out of its use at the point, and now we're trying to go back and base it on that. We need legal counsel to make some interpretations, so we don't go down the path and do something that is going to create a domino effect for us on other pieces of property that people are going to come forward. Like it to be tight so that we don't have to keep on making exceptions for everybody on everything in town.
So if you could, for the next town council meeting, prepare a document that delineates what you're currently using it, how you're using it, and what your future plans are, maybe some drawings of landscaping and where pavement might be, or what it might look like. And that could be a precursor to, if you have it ready for planning commission.
And we'll have legal counsel license by that time, so. Okay.
Can I address one other issue about the bomber? The dynamite guy.
Well, that's
We found that marks all over the neighborhood, and we've already kind of worked out a simple thing without any real direction, but when we notify you, when we find something, mark that was important enough to go to the office contacts you. Can we set that up, is there a chain of command we can set up so we know ahead of time how we should really do this? Because that's a good example. We've seen people over in a lot working that we don't have any contact with, other than we know that they want to put a house in, and he went over and started talking to kind of what's going on. We also have a water main about 170 yards north of that location. So we do have some concern. So on that end, bonding would be important for us. Some sort of insurance is covered. And I don't know we can go up and get that, but if you guys had that, it would make it easier for us just to come to you and say, who is this guy? What is he representing? Is he licensed to do what he's doing? And does he have any sort of insurance or protection in case something shakes the line and we have a break?
We figure we're going to have to make an ordinance, and it's going to take a month.
But again, we can notify you when, we usually know ahead of time because they come to us and they basically say how much is water, how much would it cost to hook up. And so we know ahead of time when you're going to start, when you're getting close, because they'll tell us. We're happy to give you that information. The scouts are pretty spread out, a lot of people stay in one part or the other. I was just wondering, how do we, is there, if you.
If town hall's open, it would be good to call instead of having sent an email.
We can do both. We like the email just because it shows a record.
That's right. Doing both is great.
What
And
other-
if
Do
the
we
office
CC?
is not open, call me.
Do we CC particular individuals?
Do we know what other cities do in this situation? Because I don't know if they all have ordinance for it.
They don't.
I'm getting ordinances from information from other towns.
They have to pull permits. They have to pull permits, and they have to fill out a form.
Wouldn't that fall under a business building permit anyway, that they'd have to specify that they have to use dynamite?
Well, at the time, they didn't think they were going to have to. The building permit was issued and, started the process. But they weren't notifying anybody. If Mark hadn't seen it, wouldn't have been able to ask them. So at least we talked to some people, and because the building, he didn't hear about it either. It was,
What if we get an official letter from the mayor indicating that any property damage is all liable?
yeah, I could get that, especially since it was happening tomorrow morning, which is why it's kind of a rush situation. We've got till Friday morning.
I think in addition to
Friday
this
afternoon.
ordinance that we're talking about, brainstorming about, it'd be great on the building permit application, because make sure, you don't know if you're gonna end up blasting until you've got the whole front of the law. If we had something on there that says, if during the course of construction, it becomes necessary to use dynamite or blasting where the verbiage is there, then you'll notify the town and it'll be subject to these following conditions that are laid out in ordinance such and such. I think that's something we need to have as part of our building permit.
I think so too. So we need to look at that. I'm sorry, Cheryl, I understand your husband has a lot of expertise in this, and I had hoped to contact him, and I just didn't get around to it today. But would you be available tomorrow or the next day?
He works during the day.
Does he? So
You would have to contact him tonight.
Okay.
He usually works from about 7:30 till about 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Now, from past experience as a Boy Scout, you can probably call any Boy Scout troop, they got plenty of experience working with
With
explosives.
dynamite?
Explosives in general.
No, they're, the blasting companies are highly regulated, and Rick can vouch for this. They're highly regulated by the state, and their insurance is through the roof. So as far as bonding issues, they're extremely professional.
I'm just curious, like I said, if you want us to contact, you want to CC all, when we find something like that, you want to CC everybody, do you want us just to, we basically did the mayor and what we think we should mayor.
First town hall, and there's nobody here, after business hours, contact me, and not me, then one of the council.
I'm happy enough to get a CC on it right from the start.
Like I said, Mark's so good about that, he's all over the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Aya.
Thanks.
Okay, discussion item B is the Leeds 2006 fire. We received a letter asking us to probably fork out $15,000 to pay for this fire, just our share of the cost. And numerous letters have been sent to the town. Well, we don't have any copy of that, we don't know, none of us. You don't, you
Yeah,
remember anything?
yes. Trudy Law had received a call from the fire. She may have it in the file, but we did not have to pay. So there was one of the agency that we said that we did not have to pay.
Okay, so I'll call her.
That's what I find out.
Okay.
Because we have special services, and that was part of the idea. Because our fire department, and I know they were down there fighting that fire, so.
So you think that Mayor Long was told by some agency that town you don't have to pay for services?
Because we were really worried that we were gonna have to, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars the cost. We were afraid we were gonna have to pay for some of that.
Who's asking for you?
$306,408.
And the letter comes from the Don Swallow's office.
Attorney General.
Oh, okay.
John Swallow.
On behalf of,
You may not get another letter from him.
I'm right. On behalf of the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Land.
Yeah, on state
reimbursement.
legislatures.
It was prompted by the Natural Resources, Agriculture, and Environmental Quality Appropriations Subcommittee of the Utah Legislature. What I would suggest, though,
They're looking for money.
in their letter, they do mention Mayor Law and our response, and they challenge that. They indicate, which attorney generals, I think, do across the entire country, if you ignore them for 90 days, they will assume that you are wrong and you will have no further recourse. There is a letter that I had drafted because I'd seen a copy of this earlier this week, and I ran it by our legal counsel for 30 seconds, not during closed session, but just prior to it. And he said he sees absolutely nothing wrong and we should send it. I think it's important just to not allow the clock to get anywhere near the 90 days, so that we will, by responding this way, I believe, put it back in their court where they need to provide us with additional information. You can go ahead and still contact the former mayor to get additional as to where we were notified exactly. As I read this, though, it is something we have to be very careful about, because if we're not careful, we could have a judgment entered against us. But I don't think that, from what I've heard to this point, that they are likely to prevail unless we drop the ball. So I think it's very important that we respond with a letter from you, Mayor, and that we also follow up with the previous mayor who was involved to try to get more details should it come down to more of an argument or disagreement with the Attorney General's office.
So we'll get this off right away, just to cover the basics, especially since it took them a month to get us this. So that's for almost 30 days off of our 90.
He's pretty busy right now.
Right.
Okay, new website.
Any other comments on this? Okay. All right, yes, new website, and Wayne and I met with, and Christie met with some IT people for, from InfoWest for establishing a new website. Do you want to make some comments on that first?
Sure. What we ended up asking them to do at the end is to present a proposal as to what it would involve if they were to be the ones to design and host our website. I will tell you one of the things that I just find interesting to want to hear what they are suggesting is that, unlike our past history as it's been explained to me, they're an entity who's in this business. It's part of their ongoing business. It's not a particular individual. It's a communications, internet, voice company that is in the business and has been for a couple of decades now of providing services such as this. And what they've agreed to do is come back and say what it would cost to replicate what our existing website is right now, utilizing their services. And then if we wanted to modify it, we could get back to them and find out what it would cost if we wanted it to look different. We don't have to just replicate what we have. And be able to move forward, because October will arrive quickly, and October is when we will need to either re-up with an existing provider or move to a new provider.
So, their proposal was that they could probably produce this for between $2,000 and $3,000, the website. And then for a fee of, depending, $15 to $25, depending on the level of service we went with, we can have unlimited, secure email accounts for the town, in addition to them hosting. We would still maintain our connection with Bluehost for the domain names, but we would not be associated then with Homestead. Any comments?
Did you know what they charge per hour for website updates?
$80 an hour.
$80 an hour.
And that's what they were basing, that's what they thought it would take. That's what they thought it would take them in terms of time to develop the website. So it's $80 for anything updated. What do you think?
Sounds like a lot of money per hour, very engaged for the website. But there's definitely some benefits to going with a company who,
InfoWest that doesn't own the domain.
well, I mean, just InfoWest, they're gonna be around for the foreseeable future. And having a partner that is gonna be around and not going through this process of somebody that's managing our website now who's out of town. I like the idea of company that,
Is there any legalities on reproducing our new website through InfoWest and the host we have at this point in time?
we own all the content of the website, and we not be
But
duplicated.
it would design-
They would design a new website and put our content on that website.
So no legal issues there.
I mean, there's been some, we had a bid from an individual for 1,500 to create it, but there again, it's just one individual, whereas for the company, even if the people that were working, we were to work with initially were to leave, they would replace, the employees in that department.
Sure.
So,
There are capable individuals throughout southern Utah that could do this work for $15 to $20 an hour. But is that person gonna be around in 5 years or 10 years?
Well, and I had a problem in 2008 when the market crashed. The host on my website, I think I expressed it before, moved out of town, out of state actually. And she was my domain name, but
This is
I know
the
nothing.
administrator.
Yeah, I know nothing about computers. Then all of a sudden, my website disappeared. I tried to buy it back, and it was $13,000.
Yeah.
And like I said, you never know what the economy's gonna do. Who's gonna move, you know? And if you let it lapse, in trouble with your info west, you're gonna have always gonna have somebody updating that. I mean, they may change staff, but you're gonna have.
It's the old saying, you're jumping over dollar bills, picking pennies, and we've done that too many times.
Yeah.
In addition, they're using a new technology, Django, that offers a lot of flexibility and makes it easier for town staff to add things, or change things without having to go for everything. So, people like that. So it seemed like it would be good for the long haul. Any other comments for now?
I think we did that.
Okay. So we will be looking at this on the agenda if we do go with them in the near future because of who's going to have. Okay, any other citizen comments at this point? Any staff reports?
I move we adjourn.
None.
Two people do the same.